The day was supposed to be full of happiness. It was supposed to be simple: balloons, a cake, laughter, a birthday song for my son, Ethan. He had just turned 7. I decorated the small living room the best I could. Cheap balloons from the dollar store floated near the ceiling, their colors a little dull but still bright enough to make a child smile. The paper streamers sagged because of the summer heat, but to me, they were proof I had tried. Ethan had been buzzing with excitement since morning. His little hands clapped when he first saw the cake I had managed to buy with tips from my late-night cleaning jobs. That cake wasn't just sugar and frosting. To me, it was proof that I could give him a moment of joy, even when life tried to steal every smile from us. It was his 7th birthday. I wanted him to feel special. I wanted him to know he mattered. I wanted him to know that, at least to me, he was worth celebrating. But the air in the house was poisoned long before the candles were lit. The heavy sound of boots echoed on the floor. My dad walked in, stomping like he owned not only the house but the air we breathed. My mom followed right behind him, wearing that smug smile I had grown to hate. And then came my sister, Kayla, her hair freshly dyed, her nails glittering, and her new dress swaying as if she were the queen of the night. She didn't pay for that dress, I knew it. Just like she didn't pay for half the things she flaunted. But nobody ever called her out. Not in this house. My dad's eyes immediately landed on the balloons, the cake, and the little pile of gifts I had managed to scrape together. His face didn't soften. He didn't smile. Instead, he barked out a laugh, sharp and cruel, the kind of laugh that cuts through the heart. "So this is what a leech wastes money on," he sneered. "A party for a brat who doesn't matter?" I froze. Ethan's smile faltered. He stepped closer to me, his little hand grabbing my arm like he was trying to disappear inside my shadow. "Dad, please," I whispered, trying to calm him before he went too far. But my father cut me off. He stepped closer, towering over me like a storm ready to break. "You think throwing a party makes you a mother?" he roared. "You can't even pay your own rent without crawling to us. And now you're pretending you're somebody?" His voice grew louder with every word. The whole room seemed smaller, tighter, like his anger was filling every corner. My mom chuckled. Her laugh was dark, bitter. "Don't shout, dear," she said mockingly. "You'll scare the boy. Then again, maybe he should be scared. Maybe he should see what happens when garbage tries to reach for more than scraps." Ethan's voice cracked. "Mommy, can we still eat cake?" The way he asked, like he was asking permission to exist, broke me in half. His eyes were big, full of tears that hadn't yet fallen. His voice shook like a tiny flame about to go out. But my dad heard it too. His face twisted in rage. "Cake," he repeated, mocking him. "Leeches don't get cake. Parasites don't throw parties. Parasites get beat." And before I could shield myself, his fist slammed into my chest. The air left my lungs. I stumbled back, hitting the table. Plates rattled. The candles flickered. Ethan screamed. I tried to shield him with my body, but Dad grabbed my shirt and shoved me to the ground. His boot came down hard against my ribs. Once. Twice. Each blow came with the word he loved to use on me. Leech. 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 The laughter followed. My mom's laugh, sharp and high, like she had been waiting for this show. My sister covered her mouth in fake shock, but her eyes glittered with joy. Even the relatives who had shown up, people I had hoped might care, turned away, chuckled nervously, pretended this was all just another family joke. Ethan's little fists balled up. His cheeks were wet with tears. His voice broke as he shouted, "Stop. Stop hurting my mom." Nobody listened. And as if the cruelty wasn't enough, my mom walked right past me lying broken on the floor. She stepped past Ethan's sobs, past the shattered plates, past the pieces of our dignity scattered across the room. She went to the cake. She lifted it gently, almost lovingly, in both hands. She turned to Kayla with a sweet smile and said, "Happy birthday, sweetheart. You deserve it more than anyone." Not her. Kayla leaned forward, blew out the candles, and clapped like a little child. My mom teased, "Make a wish." Ethan's face crumpled. His voice was barely a whisper. "But, it's my birthday." The whole room roared with laughter. My dad patted Kayla's shoulder like she had done something noble. My mom sliced the first piece of cake, not for Ethan, but for her golden daughter. And there I was, lying on the floor, half broken. Ethan looked at me, his eyes wide with confusion, betrayal, and something darker. Something that would live in him forever. That night, the house was finally silent. The fake laughter had left with the guests. The broken plates had been swept into the trash. The frosting stains on the carpet were the only proof a birthday had even been attempted. I sat with Ethan in the dark. His small hand trembled inside mine. His cheeks were streaked with dried tears. His eyes were swollen from crying so long he finally had no more tears left to give. "Mommy," he whispered, his voice shaking, "why don't they love us? How do you answer a question like that? How do you tell a 7-year-old boy that the people who are supposed to love him most, his grandparents, his aunt, had chosen cruelty instead?" I didn't answer. I just pulled him closer against me. I wanted him to feel my heartbeat, to know at least one person in the world would never abandon him. And inside myself, I made a promise. If they wanted to laugh at us, if they wanted to call us parasites and leeches, then I would make sure their laughter ended. Permanently. For the first time in years, I stopped feeling fear. I started feeling fire. The next morning, the house still smelled like melted wax and stale frosting. The balloons hung limp and lifeless. One had popped overnight, leaving a shriveled piece of rubber dangling on the ribbon. The decorations looked like evidence of a crime scene, not a birthday party. Ethan sat on the couch, hugging his knees to his chest. He hadn't touched the little pile of gifts. He hadn't smiled once. I brewed him a small cup of cocoa and placed it in his hands. "It will be better," I whispered. "I promise." But even as I said it, the promise felt heavy and bitter. In this house, with this family, there was no better. Not unless I made it. The front door creaked. My mom's heels clicked across the floor as if she owned the rhythm of the house. She looked at me like I was still lying beaten on the ground from the night before. "Don't be so dramatic," she said, adjusting her purse strap. "It was just a lesson. You should thank your father for teaching you reality. Nobody respects beggars who throw parties." Her words were casual, but each one stung like acid. My ribs still ached from Dad's boots. My lip was split. My arms were sore from trying to protect myself. But none of those bruises hurt as much as Ethan's silence. "Where's Dad?" I asked, forcing my voice to stay calm. "Working," she said smugly. "At a real job. Not like you, scrubbing toilets for pennies. You should have saved the little money you had instead of wasting it on balloons and candles." She spit the words like venom. Ethan flinched. "And Kayla?" I asked, though I already knew. "She's out shopping with her friends," Mom answered, her smirk widening. "She loved the cake, by the way. Said it was the best one she's had in years. Finally, something you did right." I swallowed the lump in my throat. I forced my eyes to stay dry. If I cried, she would win. After she left, I sat beside Ethan. He turned to me, his voice barely a whisper. "Mom, am I bad?" My heart cracked in two. "No, baby," I said quickly. "You are the best thing in my life. Don't ever believe their lies." But he hesitated. His little voice wavered. "Grandma said I don't deserve cake. Grandpa said we're leeches. If they're right, will you still love me?" and that was the moment I knew. They weren't just breaking me anymore. They were poisoning him. If I didn't fight back, they would destroy him piece by piece until he believed he was worthless. I cupped his face in my hands. Listen to me, Ethan. You are worth everything. And one day, they will learn what it feels like to lose everything they laugh about. Do you understand? He nodded, though doubt still shimmered in his eyes. From that day on, I stopped begging for their approval. I stopped trying to prove myself to people who had already decided I was nothing. I went quiet. I let them think they had one. I let them laugh louder. I let them call me names sharper. I let them push me deeper into the shadows, because silence gave me time. Dad would walk past me, muttering still useless. I didn't respond. Mom would wave Kayla's shopping bags in my face, bragging, "This is what success looks like." I didn't blink. Kayla would smirk, "Better luck next life, sis." I just smiled faintly, like a broken doll. But inside? Inside I was building. I started saving, not just money, though every extra dollar from my shifts I hid where they'd never find it. I saved moments. I saved words. I saved patterns. The way Mom locked her jewelry box. The way Dad stormed out of the house with envelopes stuffed in his work bag. The way Kayla left her phone carelessly on the counter, filled with messages bragging about the lies and thefts she thought no one noticed. They thought I was a ghost. But I became their shadow. At night, when Ethan slept, I traced the faint bruises on my ribs and planned. Every insult replayed in my head. Every laugh. Every glance they gave Ethan like he was less than human. I carved it into my memory, turning their cruelty into a weapon. But I didn't rush. No. Revenge wasn't about one quick strike. Revenge was about patience. Revenge was about letting pride rot from the inside until they choked on it. The house had become a cage, but I refused to stay trapped forever. Every day I cleaned, cooked, worked, and stayed quiet on the outside. But inside? Inside I sharpened myself like a blade. Ethan watched me closely. He didn't smile much anymore, but his eyes followed me like he was waiting to see if I would break or rise. I knew I couldn't fail him. I couldn't let him think the world could crush us without consequence. I started paying attention to things no one else thought I noticed. Dad had secrets. He always carried thick envelopes in his work bag, but they never made it to the bank. He spent hours locked in his study with the door shut, the sound of whispered phone calls slipping through the walls. I wrote down every detail, dates, times, names he muttered under his breath. Mom loved to brag. She showed off expensive jewelry to her friends, pretending it was from hard work or gifts from Dad. But I knew she didn't buy them legally. She kept them in a little locked box under her bed, wrapped in cloth, as if hiding treasure she had stolen. And Kayla? Kayla was careless. She left her phone lying around, buzzing with messages from men she manipulated, from shops where she forgot to pay, from people she owed money to but never intended to repay. She flaunted her lies because she thought she was untouchable. They thought I was invisible. But invisibility was power. At night, when Ethan fell asleep beside me, I'd whisper promises into the dark. One day, baby, they'll choke on their laughter. One day, the same voices that called us leeches will beg us for mercy. He would stir slightly, maybe half dreaming, and murmur, "Promise?" And I would whisper back, "I promise." Weeks passed. Then months. They kept mocking me, but I didn't react anymore. Dad would slap the back of my head when I walked past him. Useless. Mom would smirk as she set another necklace around Kayla's neck. This is what a real daughter looks like. Kayla would laugh when Ethan wore his second-hand shoes with holes in the soles. Guess your mom loves you in cheap ways. I swallowed it all. I let their words stack like bricks on my shoulders. Heavy, yes. But strong too. Every insult added another layer to the foundation of what I was building. Because I had learned something important, the higher they lifted themselves on their lies, the harder they would fall. One afternoon, Dad came home furious. He slammed his bag on the table, nearly tearing the zipper. Envelopes spilled out, bundles of cash, documents with names and numbers, papers he didn't want anyone to see. He snapped at me, "Clean this up, leech." I bent down, gathering the papers, but my eyes caught the words stamped across the top of one, illegal contract agreement. He snatched it from my hands before I could read more, but he didn't realize I had already memorized the name on it. That one name would later lead me to everything I needed. Mom wasn't as careful either. She liked to gloat when she thought nobody could stop her. She left receipts stuffed into drawers, receipts that didn't match her story of being a perfect housewife. Jewelry, designer shoes, perfume worth more than my yearly salary. She didn't care if people whispered that she had stolen them. She thought her charm could cover every crime. But paper doesn't lie. And Kayla? She was her own undoing. One night, I picked up her buzzing phone when she left it on the counter. The screen lit up with a message, "If you don't pay me back by Friday, I'm telling everyone." I took a picture of it. And then another. And another. Her whole phone was a vault of evidence. Lies, scams, unpaid debts, threats she thought she could ignore. Piece by piece, I built a mountain of proof. Ethan started to notice my quiet work. He would watch as I wrote notes and tucked them away in a hidden folder. "Mommy," he whispered one night, "what are you doing?" I stroked his hair gently. "I'm making sure the bad people don't win forever." His eyes widened. "You mean Grandpa, Grandma, and Aunt Kayla?" I didn't answer directly. I just pressed my finger to my lips and whispered, "Shoo. Let them laugh now. Later, we'll see who laughs last." For the first time in months, Ethan smiled a little. A small smile, fragile but real. By the time a year passed, I was ready. My bruises had faded, but the scars inside had only sharpened me. My folder of evidence was thick: contracts, receipts, photos, screenshots. Proof of every secret they thought nobody would ever uncover. But I didn't want revenge to be quick. I didn't want it to be a single scream in the night. I wanted it to be slow. I wanted it to unravel them from the inside. Because the cruelest punishment is not pain. It's watching everything you built, every lie, every stolen treasure, every false crown, collapse in front of you. And that's exactly what I was going to give them. The first step was silence. I didn't announce my plans. I didn't shout, I didn't threaten. That's what they expected, a broken woman lashing out in anger. But I had learned patience. Silence was sharper than any scream. While they laughed, I listened. While they mocked, I wrote. While they lived loudly in lies, I built quietly in truth. One evening, Dad stormed through the door, reeking of alcohol. His voice was loud, booming, angry. He threw his jacket onto the chair and started yelling at Mom about money. "Where did the cash go?" he barked. "I told you that was for business." Mom scoffed, her arms folded. "Don't blame me for your sloppy work. Maybe if you weren't sneaking around with shady deals, we'd actually have more." Kayla wandered in, rolling her eyes. "Can you two stop shouting? Some of us have real problems. I need money for a new phone." The chaos in that room was loud enough to shake the walls. But as they fought, I stayed in the corner, silent, writing down every word. The next morning, I made my move. I took one of the copies of Dad's illegal contracts and slipped it into an anonymous envelope. No name, no handwriting, nothing to trace back to me. I mailed it to a local journalist, someone who had a reputation for digging into corruption. Days later, whispers started spreading in town. People were talking about dirty deals, stolen money, and fake companies. Dad came home angrier every night, slamming his fists on the table, yelling about rats and traitors. He didn't know the rat lived under his roof. Mom was next. She loved to show off at her weekly tea parties, flaunting jewelry that sparkled under the cheap chandelier light. She'd sip from her golden-rimmed cup, pretending she was royalty while the other women clapped and envied her. But envy is fragile. It only lasts until truth cuts through it. I copied the receipts I'd stolen, expensive jewelry tied to unsavory names, shops that had already filed quiet complaints about theft. I slipped those copies into the mailbox of one of her closest friends. By the following week, that friend stopped coming to tea. Then another. Then another. The room of admirers grew smaller. The whispers grew louder. Soon, Mom was drinking her tea alone, the sparkle of her jewels suddenly looking cheap in the silence. Kayla's turn came easier. She destroyed herself with her own mouth. All I had to do was give her lies a little push. I waited until she bragged again on social media, posting pictures of her gifts, her expensive lifestyle, her fake smile painted for strangers. Then I sent screenshots of her unpaid debts and threatening messages to people she owed. It spread like wildfire. Suddenly, the boys who once followed her around vanished. The friends who once praised her style stopped answering her calls. The fake crown she wore cracked in half. I didn't need to lift a hand. She ruined herself. Through it all, Ethan stayed close to me. He didn't fully understand, but he saw the shift. He saw how the house that once roared with laughter at our pain grew quieter. He noticed how Grandpa came home with fear in his eyes, how Grandma avoided the neighbors, how Aunt Kayla locked herself in her room crying. One night, he whispered, "Mom, are you doing this?" I brushed his hair with my fingers and smiled. "I'm just making sure they can't hurt us anymore." His small hand grabbed mine tighter. "Promise you won't leave me like they do?" I kissed his forehead. "Never. You're my whole world. That's why I fight." But revenge wasn't finished. Ruining their reputation was only the beginning. I wanted them to feel what they had made us feel, powerless, humiliated, small. The final strike had to be public. I waited for the perfect chance, and it came during Kayla's big event. She had begged Dad for money to host a party, a desperate attempt to prove to the world she was still shining. He gave in, grumbling, throwing more stolen money into her hands just to shut her up. The night of the party, the house was filled with guests again. Music shook the walls. Laughter filled the air. For a moment, it felt like Ethan's birthday all over again, but this time, the celebration wasn't for him. I stood quietly in the corner, watching. I held my phone in my hand, my evidence ready. At the peak of the night, when everyone was laughing and dancing, I pressed a button. A projector lit up the wall. One by one, the images appeared. Dad's illegal contracts. Mom's stolen receipts. Kayla's threatening messages and unpaid debts. The room fell silent. Laughter froze in throats. Guests turned to look at my family, not with admiration, but with disgust. Mom gasped, dropping her glass. Dad's face turned red with fury. Kayla shrieked, trying to shut it off, but it was too late. The truth was out. Ethan stood beside me, his little eyes wide, watching everything unfold. And for the first time in his life, he saw them powerless. He leaned against me and whispered, "They can't laugh at us anymore." And he was right. That night, I didn't feel like a leech. I didn't feel like a parasite. I didn't feel like garbage lying on the floor. I felt like a mother. A fighter. A storm they never saw coming. And as my family crumbled under the weight of their own lies, I held Ethan close and whispered, "Happy birthday, my love. This time, the cake is yours." The next morning, the house was not the same. The music was gone. The laughter was gone. The smell of spilled wine and broken pride hung in the air. Dad sat at the kitchen table, his head in his hands. His phone kept buzzing with calls he didn't answer. His business partners had seen the truth. They weren't partners anymore. Mom sat silently on the couch, clutching her empty jewelry box. Her friends had already turned against her, whispering behind her back, avoiding her eyes in public. She was no queen anymore, just a woman stripped of her fake crown. And Kayla? She locked herself in her room. I could hear her sobbing through the door. The people she thought adored her had deleted her, blocked her, abandoned her. The mirror she once loved betrayed her now. Her beauty could not buy her silence from shame. For the first time, the house was quiet. Not peaceful, but quiet. And in that silence, I felt something heavy lift off my chest. Ethan ate breakfast beside me. Real breakfast. Not scraps. Not leftovers. Just a simple plate of eggs I made for him, but he ate it smiling. "Mommy," he said softly, "they look sad now." I nodded. "Yes, baby. Because lies don't last forever. Truth always finds a way." He looked at me for a long time, then whispered, "Does that mean we can be happy now?" And my heart broke and healed all in the same second. Because that's all he ever wanted, not toys, not parties, not big gifts. Just peace. Just love. Just a safe home. I pulled him close and kissed his head. "Yes, Ethan. From now on, we choose happiness. But revenge doesn't just destroy others. It changes you too." And I had to be careful not to let it poison me the way their cruelty had. So I made a choice. I wasn't going to live in this house anymore. I wasn't going to let Ethan grow up in the shadow of broken people. I gathered what little we owned. Clothes, Ethan's toys, the hidden money I had saved, and the folder of evidence that had already served its purpose. When Dad finally looked up from the table, his face pale and beaten, I stood at the door with Ethan's hand in mine. "Where are you going?" he croaked. I looked him in the eyes. For years I had lowered my head in front of him. But not this time. "Somewhere you can't hurt us anymore," I said calmly. He tried to speak, but no words came. For the first time, he was the one speechless. Mom rushed to the door, her voice trembling. "Wait, who will cook? Who will clean? Who will?" I cut her off. "Not me. Not anymore." Her face crumbled. For years she had called me useless, a parasite, a leech. Now she realized I had been the only thing holding her world together. And Kayla? She didn't even come out. She was too busy drowning in her own shame. We stepped outside, Ethan and I. The air felt different. Lighter. The sky looked wide, endless, free. Ethan squeezed my hand and whispered, "Is this the start of our new life?" I smiled through tears. "Yes, baby. Our real beginning. We didn't have much. No mansion. No riches. Just 2 suitcases, a little money, and a bond that nothing could break. But that was more than enough. Because freedom isn't measured in gold. Freedom is measured in silence, the kind of silence where no one mocks you, no one beats you, no one laughs when you cry. And in that silence, Ethan laughed for the first time in months. A real laugh. Pure, innocent, unbroken. That laugh was worth more than any revenge. Still, I couldn't lie to myself. I had scars. Deep ones. Not just on my body, but on my heart. And Ethan had them too. Healing would take time. Trust would take time. But we had time now. Because we had cut the chains. I found work. Hard work, long hours. But it was ours. Nobody could take it away. And every paycheck, no matter how small, went toward building a safe little corner for Ethan and me. And slowly, he bloomed. His laughter grew louder. His shoulders lifted higher. He ran, played, and dreamed again. One night, as I tucked him into bed, he whispered, "Mom, you're my hero." I froze. Tears filled my eyes. I had wanted revenge for myself, but in the end, I realized it was never just for me. It was for him. So he could believe in heroes. So he could believe in love. So he could believe in himself. As for my family? They withered. Dad lost his business. His partners abandoned him. Mom's friends vanished, leaving her alone with empty jewelry boxes. Kayla was left in debt, her name smeared, her reflection no longer her best friend. They had laughed once. Loudly. Cruelly. At me. At my son. But now, when the world looked at them, nobody laughed anymore. And me? I didn't need their pain to live. I had already won. My victory wasn't their downfall. My victory was Ethan's smile. Because revenge burns hot, but love lasts. And I had chosen love. When people ask me if I regret what I did, I smile. I don't regret fighting back. I don't regret exposing lies. I don't regret breaking free. But I learned something important. Revenge alone cannot heal you. It can clear the way, yes, it can remove the poison. But after revenge, you must choose what grows in its place. For me, that choice was simple. I chose Ethan. I chose hope. I chose to build instead of break. And now, when I look at my son's face, when I hear his laugh echo in our small but safe home, I know, revenge gave me justice, but love gave me life. And that is a gift no one can ever take from us again. Please like and subscribe for more videos, also comment where you're watching from.